Bava Kamma it test continues the halachos of the Daled V'Hei when a person is chayiv for slaughtering or selling something that he stole to pay the extra 4 or 5 times the amount that the thing is worth. The Gemara will begin with a list of activities that count for the Daled V'Hei, and the Gemara will explain the chiddush of 2 of them. Then we get to a Mishnah which introduces the concept of kinyanim. To do a geneva, you have to have been kaina it. The Mishnah will discuss the main types of kinyanim and bring some halachas that are relevant to whether a kinyan was completed or not completed. So let's begin. The Gemara says in the last line of Daf Ayin Ches, of a brayso that says that if a person steals an animal and he gives it to someone else to do the following activities, to either slaughter it or to sell it, that now he didn't give it to that person as a gift, he gave it to that person as a shliach, so then he's chayiv for it, and everything on the list here you'll be chayiv the Daled V'Hei. If he was makdish it, if he steals it and he sells it to someone on credit, meaning that person didn't pay for it yet, or he stole it and he used it to trade with someone, or he gave it to someone as a gift, it also counts as a mechira. If he used it to pay off a loan that he owed, or used it to pay off something that he himself bought on credit, so he owed. If he stole it and he sent it as gifts to his in-laws, that is part of the engagement that he had. All of these things is considered to be a sale or shchita in the one case, and therefore he's chayav to pay the Daled V'Hei. Now the Gemara wants to know what's a chiddush. The Gemara says chiddush of 2 of these. The Gemara says the first case where he gave it to someone. The chiddush is yesh shliach l'dvar aveira. For this one, halacha generally, if you make someone a shliach to do an aveira for you, he's responsible for his own actions. He can't blame it on you. You're not over an aveira for him fulfilling your shlichus. Here it's different because the Torah specifically says it puts the slaughtering and the sale together. Just like sale can only be done through someone else, you have to have someone else involved. Tvicha is also good if it's done through someone else. It also counts as a tvicha to mechayev him the Daled V'Hei. Now, another chiddush is that if you makdish it, it counts, because what's the difference between whether you sell it to a hedi, to a regular common individual, or if you sell it to shemayim? If you give it as hektish, it counts as if you sold it to shemayim. Either way, it counts as a mechira for the Daled V'Hei and your chayav. Okay, now we begin our next Mishnah. So the Mishnah discusses kinyanim. So the kinyanim that you have to complete the geneva, that you actually take possession of, and having stole it, is if you take it out of the reshus of the owner, or you do a hagbah, you lift it up. And if you're dragging it towards you, or you're still in the reshus of the owner, the Mishnah implies that that's not a kinyan yet, and you wouldn't be chayiv for selling it or stealing it at that point. You have to first do a kinyan geneva, and then a tvich mechera afterwards be mechayev the Daled V'Hei. So the Mishnah says the following thing: if he steals it in the reshus of the owner and he slaughters it outside the reshus of the owner, so then he would be chayiv because he did a kinyan by taking it out of the reshus of the owner. Or if he stole it outside the reshus of the owner and then he sold it inside the reshus of the owner, so by stealing it there, he's already outside the reshus of the owner, so he's kind of the geneva that way. Or if he steals it and he does the mechira all outside the reshus of the owner, that's fine, because since he's already outside the reshus of the owner, it's an automatic kinyan when he steals it on the spot. The only problem is if he steals it and does the tvicha mechira inside the reshus of the owner, he never did a kinyan. The meshicha there doesn't count for anything, and therefore he's pater from the Daled V'Hei. Now, on a similar note, the Mishnah says if he was pulling it towards him and he was taking it towards the edge of the owner's reshus, and then it dropped dead there on the spot, he's pater, because he never got around to doing a tvicha mechira. He was never kind of it. Now, if ever he did a hagbah, he lifted it up, even in the reshus of the owner, or he took it out of the reshus of the owner and then it died there, he would be chayiv. He's responsible for it. He's chayiv to pay for it. Now, the Mishnah now discusses a number of other things he could have done with it. There's 2 different explanations in Rashi. Are we talking about where the owner did this or the thief did this? Rashi understands it means, in Rashi's preferred pshat, it's the thief that did this. So if the thief took the animal and he gave it to a kohen to redeem his son as a pidyon haben, or he gave it to someone that he owes, or he gave it to a shomer, a shomer chinam, a shayl, an ischar, or a sachar. All these things depends on what the kinyan that happened was. If he was pulling it and it died in the reshus of the owner, so he's pater. None of these things count as a mechira. Nothing happened, and there the patur still exists. If, however, he lifted it up, he did a hagbah, or took it out of the reshus, then there's a chiv. Now, this last part seems to be repeating the halacha from the beginning of the Mishnah, and the Gemara quickly picks up on that point. However, the Gemara approaches it from a different direction. The Gemara quotes, a question was asked by a Meimer. A Meimer said, this day we have a rule that somebody buys something, he's not kained until he does a mashicha, until he pulls it towards him in a neutral rishus. Does that apply to a shomer as well? Is the shomer not responsible for it? Is he not become a shomer until he does a mashicha? Or as soon as you give it to the shomer, even if he never does a ma'aser mashicha, he's already responsible for it. So Rav Yemar said he could bring a proof from our Mishnah, from the Sefer, from this extra whole discussion we had in the end, where it said that if the thief gives it to a kohen for opinion of ben, or to somebody he owes, or to shemchina mashal neseschar v'seicher, and he did a mashicha and it died, but the mashicha wasn't finished yet, then he's pater. So you see that as long as the mashicha is not completed, then he's not chayav for its shmira yet, and therefore you see that the kinyan mashicha, you need a kinyan mashicha for the responsibility of the shomer to begin. So the Gemara says, no, the pshat here is not that the shomer was doing mashicha. We're talking about a thief stealing it from the shomer. Talking about that a thief, that the owner gave it to a kohen for a pidyon ben or to any of the shomer, and then a thief came and steal it from them. The thief is only considered to have stolen it once he did the kinyan mashicha. So it has nothing to do with the shomer here. This is not relevant to that halacha at all. So Gemara says, if that's what it's saying, then the Mishnah is a complete repetition of what it said before. It's just repeating that the ganef has to do a kinyan mashicha for the geneva to take hold. So it can't be repeating that. Why would we need to say that again? So the Gemara tries to answer by saying, no, we need to say the halacha tos. We need to say that the ganef who steals from the original owner has to do a mashicha, and the ganef who steals from the shomer has to do a mashicha. And that's why the Mishnah has to repeat it too. So the Gemara rejects it. Rav Ashi says that doesn't make sense. Why would we have to repeat the same halacha? What's the difference if he takes it from the original owner or if he takes it from the shomer? It should be the same. So therefore, Rav Ashi wants to conclude, like we said originally, we're talking about the mashicha of the shomer, and this teaches me that the shomer himself has to do mashicha. Until then, they made a takana that he's not responsible for what happens. The smear is not begun. And the Gemara quotes of Elazar, who says the same thing. He says, just like they made a takana that a purchaser, a lokeach, does not take responsibility until he does mashicha, a shomer also does not take responsibility until he does mashicha. Markotz Brisa says that as well, just like they made a takana of mashicha for lekech, they made the same takana for shomer. Now that Brisa continues and it says more. It says just like karka can be purchased three ways: kesef, shtar, chazaka, money transfers the ownership, or a contract, or chazaka by actually using it and treating it like your own. So the same way, a rental is kind of with kesef, shtar, and chazaka. So when it says a rental doesn't tell me what. Rental of what? If you're talking about a rental of movable objects you can't use a shtar for. Shtar is not chalan, kalim. So the Gemara says, no, we're talking about a rental of land. So purchase of land and rental of land, it's all the same. Now, the Gemara continues, and the Gemara is now going to get into the difference between a ganef and a gazlan more at length. And then we'll get to the next Mishnah, which discusses which animals you're allowed to raise in Eretz Yisrael, and that'll take us through the next stuff. The Gemara begins with a halacha said by Rabbi Elazar. He says if they saw someone hiding in the forest and he was there in order to be able to steal animals that were grazing there, and then he took one and he slaughtered it and he sold it, so he has to pay the dal v'hei. So the Gemara says this is a kasha what we said before because there's no mashicha. So because it says no, there was a mashicha. He hit it with the stick and he made it move, and that's called mashicha. Okay, that ends the sugya mashicha. Now the Gemara notes that in the context here, Rabbi Elazar referred to someone who they saw hiding in the forest. Now, the halacha is that tficha mechira is only mechayev the dal v'hei if he's a ganav, because that's what the Torah says. If he's a gazlan, then he's not. Now, someone who you see stealing, that's a gazlan. A ganav is somebody who hides and sneaks it away. Someone asks, if this is a gazlan, he should be potter. So the Gemara says, no, since he was hiding, that makes him a ganav. Even though you saw him, a gazlan is someone who doesn't hide. A ganav is someone who hides. He was hiding. So the Gemara says, so what's an example of a gazlan? So Rabbi Yevo quotes a pasuk in Shmuel about Bidyahu ben Yehoyada. Says, "V'hu hika es ish mitzri." He hit a Egyptian man, ish marat uviyad mitzri chanis. The mitzri was holding a weapon. V'yered elev bashavet, He went to him with a stick. He took that weapon from the mitzvah, and he hit him with his own weapon. And he killed. He literally in his face grabbed it away from him. That's an example of a gazlan. Now that's Rabbi Avo's example. Rabbi Yechon brings a different pasuk, this one from Shoftim, and it's the people of Shechem. It says, "Vaysimuloi balei Shechem ba'arvim arashi haharim." They hid at the top of the mountain. Vayigzlu is kol asher yavar aleim badarach v'yugad l'Avimelech. They used to steal things that were passing along the road, and then this was reported to Avimelech, the king of the Pelishtim. So the Gemara wants to know, okay, we have two examples here. Why did they not want to say like each other's example? Gemara says, why didn't Avo say Rav Yechanan's example about the people hiding on the mountaintops? The Gemara says, since they were hiding, they're not real Gazlanim. Gazlanim don't hide. Rav Yechan didn't have a problem with it because he said that they were only hiding so that people shouldn't see them and avoid that area. However, they weren't hiding because they were afraid to be spotted, because they jumped out and they attacked the people in broad daylight. Continuing on the topic of Gazlanim, Gemara says that the Talmidim asked Rav Yechan ben Zakkai, why is the Torah deal more strictly with a Ganav who hides than a Gazlan who doesn't hide, that he doesn't have to pay the Dalat V'hei? Rav Yechan answered, because the Ganav, is more embarrassed, more worried about what people see, about what the servant sees, and not what the master sees, not what HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees. He hides from people, but he doesn't pay attention to the fact that you can't hide from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. As opposed to the Gazlan, at least he treats them equally. He's not afraid of either one. So the Ganav, he makes the eye down here below more important than the eye above, and the ear down here below more important than the ear above, as if Hashem doesn't see or hear Kaviyachol. Now, the Gemara quotes a pasuk on that, pasuk in Yeshaya. It says, "Hay hamamikim and Hashem lahaster eitza." There's the people who dig down deep to hide from Hashem, as if it were they hide their activities and they say, "Who sees? Who knows?" Now, another pasuk the Gemara brings it says, "Vayomar la'yir akavli yavna lekei Yaakov," and the third pasuk, "Ki amru azav Hashem ha'aretz ve'ein Hashem roya." All these people Kaviyachol think that they could hide from Kadosh Baruch Hu and they won't be seen. Quotes a brayser. Rabbi Meir says, "It's a mashal that was brought by Rabban Gamliel. Let's say two people make a party in the city. Neither of them invite the king or his family, but one invite the regular people, and one doesn't invite anybody, not the townspeople and not the king. So which is worse? Who's going to get punished worst? If he didn't invite anybody, okay, he's not inviting the regular people, he's not inviting the king. However, if he invites the regular people and not the king, that's a slap in the face, and for that he's going to get it. Now the Gemara concludes the sugya of the Daled V'hei by asking, why is there a difference between the Daled and the Hay? Why is someone who steals or shachts a cow have to pay 5 times the amount? Someone who steals or shachts a sheep has to pay only 4 times. So Rabbi Meir says because the cow is greater because it has work. The fact that he was mavatal it from its work, he has to pay 5 times the amount. And he says, look, see how great the value of work is. Rabbi Yechon ben Zakkai says it's because of kavod habriyos. The cow walks on his own, and therefore there is nothing that is particularly demeaning to the thief. However, the thief who stole a sheep ends up having to carry it. That's a bizayin. For that, he only has to pay 4 times the amount, not 5 times the amount. All right, now we'll begin our next Mishnah, which introduces the topic of animals you should not be raising in Eretz Yisrael or even at all. So the Mishnah begins and it says you should not raise small farm animals, meaning sheep and goats in Eretz Yisrael, because they eat in everybody else's fields and farms, and it destroys the yishuv. It destroys the land by them eating it down to the quick. However, you could raise them in Syria, parts of Syria which were captured by David HaMelech. Rashi explains that this Mishnah holds that it's not considered the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael, and therefore we're not worried about the yishuv. Now, in the midbar of Eretz Yisrael, you are allowed to raise them there. That's area which won't have the yishuv anyway. Therefore, we're not worried about them. Now, the Mishnah continues and says you shouldn't keep chickens in Yerushalayim because there's kachim in Yerushalayim. Chickens tend to root around and peck through the garbage, and they can end up therefore with the bones of a sheretz that would then be metame kachim if they throw it on kachim, which is likely to happen. Therefore, don't have chickens in Yerushalayim. Kohanim should not have chickens anywhere in Eretz Yisrael because they could have taharis, they could have truma, and the like anywhere, and therefore we don't want them to become tummy because of the chickens there as well. Should not raise a chazir in any place. That's a pig. Shouldn't raise a dog at all unless it's tied with a chain. and you can't set out traps to catch pigeons within 30 ris, that's 4 mil, of the yishuv, of the village, because the yoinim which you will catch that close belong to people. You want to catch wild ones, you have to make sure to leave that space from the village. The Gemara begins with a brisa that discusses a similar halacha. The brisa says you can't raise a small farm animal, sheep or a goat, in Eretz Yisrael, but you could raise them in the forests of Eretz Yisrael. Just like we said, the midbar of Eretz Yisrael, you could also raise it in the forests of Eretz Yisrael. Now, in Syria, you could raise it even in the villages, and certainly the brisa says in Chutz La'aretz you could also raise it in the villages. Now, next brisa says you shouldn't raise a behema daka, small farm animals, in Eretz Yisrael, but you could raise them in Midbar Yehuda and in the Midbar, which is on the border of Akko, the Akko border with outside Eretz Yisrael. Now, even though we said you should not raise a behema in Eretz Yisrael, a small behema in Eretz Yisrael, you could raise a large behema because you have to have them. People need it to be able to work. You can't make a gzeira that the tzibur aren't going to follow, or at least the majority of the tzibur. And people needed to work their farms, so therefore that's impossible gzeira. Now, even though we need sheep and goats as well, that you could just import their meat from Chutz La'aretz, but large farm animals you have to have. Now, there are some exceptions to the rule that you're not allowed to have a behema daka in Eretz Yisrael, and that's if you have a wedding or close to a yontif, or if you are a person who sells meat, like a butcher, then you're allowed to have them, but you're only allowed to have them up to 30 days before you need them. Now, the Gemara clarifies, not 30 days total, because if you bought it 5 days before Yontif, 5 days before the wedding, or 5 days before you plan to sell them, you can't keep it for another 25 days after. You have to get rid of it right away. You can bring it in 30 days before, and that's it. You gotta, if the butcher has to sell them, and if you can't, you gotta get rid of them after. You don't get to keep it for longer, not after the Yontif, not after the wedding, not after anything along those lines.